If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
To award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
When I was in high school, I had one of my favorite teachers who still happens to be one of the most influential teachers that I've had. While I loved writing, I would constantly feel as if I had writer's block. Get a few paragraphs in, then lose all steam ahead. He constantly gave us prompts, forced us to write even if we weren't feeling up to it that day. While the lesson was annoying, it would come back to me at a much later time when I was still having the same problem. Finish the damn story. What I've realized is that while I have trouble working on a piece at times, I try switching to something else, maybe a short story, a poem, or work with friends on different creative pieces or tell tales to weave. It helps keep my mind alive, and working constantly is truly the purpose of what we do every day. We strive to create something that means something to one person. I don't need to change the lives of thousands. I only aim to change the life of one.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
To award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
Thank you for tuning in to Typing When Tipsy. My name is Nicole Mancha, and I'm so glad to be back this week. And I know you guys have been asking for him, so producer Mike is back.
Yeah, I know nobody's been asking for it because I do the numbers and comments and everything. So I know absolutely nobody's been asking for this episode, but thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. So I wanted to talk a little today about something that was brought up with some of my friend groups. A friend of mine, Courtney, is... she does video game reviews for people that are deaf or have some sort of disability. And I thought it was really interesting because a lot of the ideas for stories that they get is through video games. And while I look at things and, you know, I get my stories and things like that through my life and just how I kind of create, I was thinking more about not everybody loves to read. Not everybody loves to be part of that life. So what in your life kind of makes you feel creative? What in your life affects you differently? And so I thought it was kind of a cool aspect to bring up, was that relationship between creativity, game building, world building, and design. So I wanted to get your opinion on it because I know you play every big video game that comes out, and if it does, it kind of speak to your creativity? Do you feel like it feeds into that kind of spirit, or is it just something that you enjoy? Or is there a connection between the two, right?
Oh, I think it's an interesting question, but as I get older, I value my time a lot more now.
Okay.
So I consider a video games an outlet of a little bit of everything. It's like a good movie or a good Netflix show. It's like, for example, everybody who watches us on the network knows that we're all nerds here. So we watch the Netflix, Marvel shows and whatnot. And let's say something like Iron Fist. I really wasn't enjoying it.
Right.
So I didn't go watch season 2. I'm not going to sit there and waste 10 hours of my life doing something I don't enjoy. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the video game. So right now, I mean, the reason we're talking about this is Red Dead Redemption 2 came out. And it's kind of been the game of the last few months since Spider-Man came out and whatnot. And that's the kind of game where, like, I can role play. I can lose myself in that universe for an hour or two and be good with it and kind of, like, let it go. I get something out of it, but it's so subjective because some people could play Kirby, which is just a blue little marshmallow, and
isn't it pink?
Yeah, a pink marshmallow, and all of a sudden you can, people can find solace and love it. People play Yoshi games and they get thrown into it, and then there's some people who play like a Legend of Zelda that typically doesn't have voiceover work. Typically, the world building is just text and you making up your own stuff as you go along. But I mean, that's kind of been the thing of forever. Like, video games are just a digital way of, like, choose your own adventure. Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm not a big video game person. I like the old video games. I'm not into the new stuff. I just don't understand it. But for me, it's always been when I'm reading a book or writing something, I'm living a different life. And I'm part of this world that's kind of been created either for me or that I'm creating myself. And it gives me a different life to live. And I guess I'd never really thought about it when it comes to video games. And Courtney did a great job in the article that they wrote about that relationship that tied from youth to what Red Dead was now. Because, like, growing up, they worked on a horse farm. And it brought back all those memories and also allowed them to live a different life, which I thought was really cool and something that I guess I don't really think about when it comes to video games, because like we've talked about this a lot where we always say video games are getting really, really close to evoking that emotion.
Making people cry.
Yes. Yeah. And while there are certain things that happen, obviously, like when people die, sometimes people just get that knee-jerk reaction to cry.
Sure.
But truly evoking it on many different levels, where I think you get in movies. Like, movies can bring happiness, tears, sadness, tears, all of that. And I didn't know if that necessarily was a video game thing.
I think we crossed that frontier, but that frontier took a while. I mean, it's a different media, though, because it's unlike literature, where it's just literally, you're just reading and you're imagining in your mind. These video games are zeros and ones, and they're specifically trying to evoke an emotion, while it's a digital clay character. I think it's more of an uphill battle, but for the longest time, like when you were playing like Super Mario World, right?
Yeah.
Like on a 16-bit system, like you can only be so emotionally invested in him. But mind you, I mean, I guess it kind of works still though, because 30 years later, 40 years later, these characters who were just little sprites have become these IPs that are bigger than anything else in the world, and they have like these, this luscious lore and whatnot. But I think what evokes it was finally getting past that uncanny valley. We haven't gotten past it quite yet, but like that idea of like, oh, okay, this is more than just killing monsters. There was I was invested in this story for 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, however long it is, and it's like anything in life. Like a good commercial, a good car commercial can make you cry, and that's just advertisement.
Right, and I think that idea kind of was lost on me for a really long time until you started playing Uncharted. And that's when I got really invested in the story and what was happening, and I wanted to be involved in it. And I hadn't seen that necessarily from another game.
Well, I mean, it's funny because Naughty Dog, who makes Uncharted, also makes like The Last of Us, and they're much more known for their narrative. And like, I essentially like consider them, Insomniac, Santa Monica Studio, Rockstar. They're not video game studios; they're production studios.
Okay.
Their media just so happens to be video games, but they would be great had they started off in the movie business, had they started off in the music business. Their talent and their passion and their grind make these things possible. But like, there's a reason why God of War hit the mainstream the way it did. There's a reason why that Spider-Man game hit the way it does. There's a reason why there's going to be an Uncharted movie. There's a reason why people want Nathan Fillion to be Nathan Drake for the last 10 years.
Well,
it's like
should be.
there's certain things that like just hit the zeitgeist, and specifically Naughty Dog, and then like these other studios, they do that. So like, you walking in, you know, it's kind of, you went to school for it. So it's like, it's a glamorization of Indiana Jones. I mean, essentially, if you like Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Like,
could
it's
see that.
Indiana Jones in video games. Same thing with Tomb Raider. It's like, there's so many things that we've accepted in one media. Like, here's the crazy thing. How long have video games been around for?
Ever.
No. I mean, since
30.
since
40
the 60s.
years? Is it the-
So since the 60s and 70s, when they had the little sprites and the little electronic things, Hollywood's been around since the 20s, 1920s, 1930s.
Before that.
So overall,
yeah.
so like, they've had literally generations to be able to perfect the art form of movie making.
Right.
We are just now seeing the perfection, and we're not even there yet, but like, to that point where there's going to be a day where we're going to be controlling digital characters that look like us.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, Mike Mercado2333.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
Just another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing,
Hey,
buddy?
sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.
So really, I mean, if you think about it, video games have exploded in their
Yeah.
growth
Yeah, they have.
compared
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
compared to like movies and things like that, because I think, but do you think it's like the kids that grow up now, it's like they exploded because of the era that they're in,
Yeah.
because the technology was
the
just
80s,
there to do it?
Game Boy, Super Nintendo, like that stuff was real. Like 80s and 90s advertisement was legit.
Right,
Like
but
it made it part of it. Like there's no denying the impact that video games have had on not just, that part of entertainment, but what it's done to reading, what it's done to studying, what it's done to writing, what it's done to anything like that. Like there's no, it took the place of a lot of different things. And now in 2018, we're definitely seeing it more. I don't think it's as bad as people want to say, like, oh, kids never go outside. It's like, that's not true. Like, kids are always outside. Kids will always be going outside.
yeah.
But, like, to these kids, like, for the perfect example, if you're playing Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, it's the equivalent of when I was 8 years old playing Super Mario 64. It's like, yeah, I look back at Super Mario 64 right now, and it's like, oh, like, nostalgia, but it doesn't look good in 2018 like it did in 2000.
Right.
Well, that's how these kids are growing up right now. It's
No,
like,
I get it.
they don't appreciate that they're in this, like, this new era of technology. Like, they just think this is just the norm. That the way that video game looks is the way all video games are supposed to look.
Right.
So, like, it's not like they're being drawn in by graphics. Like, graphics are all good. Everything is good.
Yeah.
Like, even their phones have it.
I think that there's also, this is just me, is that if my kid's going to do something at home, I'd almost rather them play video games because there's at least that dynamic of movement and creative play that's involved, the decisions that need to be made.
Some games.
Well, compared to TV, because they've even said that, like, there was research that was done that said your brainwaves move less when you're watching TV than when you're sleeping.
But those things are so arbitrary because then there's also studies that say whether or not you're doing calculus or you're watching television, you're using the same amount of brain activity. So it's like, depending on what your math is and who you're trying to sell it to, like, I could say anything, but would I rather my child watch, I don't know, Band of Brothers on Veterans Day weekend opposed to playing Call of Duty? Probably.
Right.
So it's like there is a universe for both where it's like, yeah, maybe I want my kid playing Minecraft because there is this idea of learning how to build, learning creative problem solving, so on and so forth. But at the same time, like, there's good media, especially when it comes to television and movies, that are just as beneficial, just like there is reading. But at the same token, like, there's a lot of, and it's funny because Americans, and probably this is worldwide, but Americans, like, we have this snootiness about reading, like, oh, you got to read. Like, if you're reading, you're a smart person. You're an intelligent person. I'm like, have you seen some of the bullshit books that people write?
Yep.
I mean, like, it's not like, let me ask you this. Is it more beneficial for a person to play Zelda Breath of the Wild or read 50 Shades of Grey? What is more beneficial to a human being, reading the book or playing that video game?
Right.
It's like, to me, you know, somebody could be there, like, well, they're practicing their reading and they're using their imagination, but opposed to turning on essentially Lord of the Rings in cell shade. So, like, what is more beneficial?
Yeah. I think there's this interesting kind of relationship between creative play that I didn't really necessarily think about before. So a lot of what I think that people, maybe not everyone, but people overall I feel like have lost was that, like, that love of reading, that love of writing, but being able to find that creative play in other places I think is important, because there's this idea that, yes, kids are spending more time inside, which they are spending more time inside. That's just how it is right now and how it probably will continue to be. But a lot of that has to do with just family dynamics. Is we don't have a parent home necessarily all the time, so the kids can be out doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to stay at home because mom and dad both have jobs and both have to work, and they're latchkey kids. You know what I mean? So I think there's that difference of just the household dynamic now, which changes things a lot. So, but I think that not realizing it was creative play was something that I didn't necessarily put together. And I think it's important, and I think it's something that needs to be at least brought up in different social circles, because I've never been the one to say that I think certain books are bad or certain books are good, you know, because my thing is if you're reading, I would love you to read than to not read at all. Sure. So I don't care what you read as long as you're reading. Because I think that there is this moment that happens that allows for creativity and to live in that world for a moment that's been built up for you.
Yeah, but I mean, everything is responsibility. Like, if you're playing, you know, World of Warcraft for 12 hours, that's not beneficial. Unless you're making money off of it or you're streaming or something like. And like that's the thing too. How can you tell people that it's a waste of time when people literally make so much money now playing video games?
Not us.
Like, it's a thing, and that's the thing that always upsets me. Is, like, again, this idea, like, this, that certain things are the way they are because we have this pre-notion idea of, like, only losers do this and only losers do that. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, everybody needs a distraction. I'm like, I think that's exactly what it is. But even creativity, like, sometimes you need to turn the brain off. Yeah. You need to, like, do something for an hour and not go crazy.
Yeah, I think that there's this, I think that there's a balance, right, of being able to turn your brain off and also stimulating your mind. Sure. And allowing for that stimulation. So I think that's where I kind of came to the, that different kind of mix that I think I didn't expect to happen when I started reading more about it and people were talking about it. And I'm like, oh, like it's not just about wanting to get away. It's about wanting to get away in a different world where you get to live.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm much more cynical, but it's not. You know, I don't. For example, when I'm sitting there, I don't think if, like, for example, when I'm playing the Spider-Man, God of War, or Red Dead Redemption, like, I don't sit there thinking like I'm Kratos right now. It's more along the lines of I'm on this adventure with them. I'm there. I'm much more invested. It's why video game movies don't relate to movies well. Because it's a personal experience.
Right.
I turned left with Kratos instead of turning right. It wasn't one of those, like, if I were Kratos, I would do this. It's more like I'm going with the flow if the game is allowing me to, and this is just like the adventure that I was put on. And that's why I think a lot of people are able to put themselves in, essentially role-playing. They're allowed themselves to become these characters. But for me, it's more along the lines of, like, the experience of, oh man, I did not see that monster coming out from that way, or I did not see this mission going down this way, or so on and so forth. Like, it's so easy to try to be generic about it and be like, you lose yourself in the game. It's like, you don't lose yourself in a book. You draw yourself into it. You create your own entertainment when you're reading these books. Like, I don't think you can ever really lose, and I'm only speaking for myself. I don't think you can ever really, like, lose yourself. Like, if I'm reading, Harry Potter, it's like I'm picturing Harry Potter, but, like, I'm not there. I'm just reenacting it in my mind. Like, it's a play. It's not. I'm not that person. Like, I think that's where my disconnect comes between a lot of people. It's like they're not my avatar. They're just a play I'm watching. They're reenactment I'm watching. But I don't know the ending. But
video games have brought out and evoked emotion in you, right? Sadness. Like true sadness?
No, not true sadness. Like, if they bum me out where, like, a character dies, you're like, oh, man, I like that character. But, like, I've been emotionally invested in television characters and things like that. But, personally, too, like, I allow myself to get invested. But then I also, real life kind of takes me away from that because I do so many different things that, I could lose myself and be like, damn, I can't believe this character just died. Tweet it out, be upset about it, and then at the same token, I'm not working on show notes about a real-life veteran that lost his leg serving the war.
Right.
So, like, unlike other people who could probably, like, simmer in the idea that, spoiler alert for The Walking Dead, spoiler alert for The Walking Dead, when Glenn dies, they can sit in it and marinate in it, and it can fester in it for them. For me, it's like, all right, well, I can only do that for so long because the next thing on my timeline is going to be the Senate doubles the pay for insulin.
I guess it's like that's kind of maybe I would argue that that's a difference between video games and books, because I could argue so very hard against what you said that almost every single person I know loses himself in a book. We become so emotionally invested. Like, I've cried reading books because I'm so torn up about what has happened to that character, because I was in the book. In my mind, I had allowed myself to be part of this thing that I wouldn't be a part of. And maybe that's why I enjoy writing them, is because it lets me live a different life that I wouldn't get to live outside of that. And maybe that's where we need to get. When you watch a movie where you're crying and you're evoked emotion, all that, it's because I feel like you're so invested in these characters, and you have this, they create such phenomenal characters at times where you feel like they could be friends of yours if you met them outside of that. And I think those relationships that pull you in and becoming invested in their relationships, because a big thing with characters is making them relatable to somebody else. So when you see this happening between character A and character B, and they fall in love and then they break up, you know how that feels. It's an extremely relatable moment in your life that you can go back to and, kind of hark on. And that happens in books too. So I'm wondering if that's where we need to get in video games for it to really parallel out.
There's a difference though, because there's a face, there's a voice in a video game for the most part. Like, if J.K. Rowling and Warner Brothers didn't come up with the Harry Potter franchise movies, right? Mm-hmm. The only picture you would have, everybody's idea of Harry would be different unless you thought of the boy on the cover. So there is that idea of, like, where a video game is my story, my pick and adventure. A book is, when people were reading Game of Thrones, did they think Jon Snow looked like that? Did they think, Khaleesi looked that way? Like, it's different. Like, when you say you get lost in a book, I think you create your own fantasy. Like, it's not getting lost. You're creating your own
You get to
thing.
personalize.
You get to personalize. Yeah,
Okay.
it's personalized opposed to, like, losing yourself in it. Like, people lose themselves in work. People lose themselves in relationships. Like, there is a difference between losing yourself in something and being invested in something.
Yeah.
I think, it's splitting hairs, but, like, obviously, again, I could personalize a movie character, a television character, and a video game character much faster because I could be like, I could see that face, I can imagine that face in pain, I know I could put a face and a voice and a smell and a texture to this person. So when that person dies or that person leaves or somebody around them dies and there's heartache, I could put myself there. Maybe it's lack of imagination, but, like, I've created so many things that I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, like, again, I don't want to shit on it because it's never happened to me, but I think it's crazy. I think it's interesting that you can lose yourself in something, but it can be completely different reading the same book. Like, your Jon Snow could look completely different than my Jon Snow.
Right.
But it's the same Jon Snow. But then here's the thing. You start adding your own lore to it. When you read a book, when people are reading Lord of the Rings or they're reading the Game of Thrones or they're reading Harry Potter, they add their own lore to it. You add, like, Harry wouldn't do that, though. If I asked you a question that didn't come up with in the book or in the movies, you'll come up with your own solution.
Right.
But that's not lore. Opposed to, like, a television show, it's like, no, there's established rules to this. Like, and again, it's my producing nitpicking of it. It's like you can explain a lot in a book, but you can over-explain.
You can over-explain. There is something that is called setting up the rules for your world. So, like, you have to set up what's going on,
Yeah.
what's okay, what's not okay,
What can
especially
happen.
right, and especially when you're talking about, like, magical
Yeah.
surrealism books,
I
because
agree.
you have
I'm
to
a
set
superhero
those
fan.
up.
Yeah, like, the rules
Right.
always change. Harry Potter's rules never changed. There was a structure. You knew
Right.
where it was. Superheroes change all the time. Like, in the superhero genre, Superman's powers are whatever the writer needs it to be.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thumb rule of comic books is, what's the secret power? What I need it to be.
Yeah. So the one last thing I did want to bring up is because I'm still super bummed about it. One of the greatest world builders, character builders, and great person died yesterday, Stan Lee, at the age of 95. He, in my opinion, is one of the most excellent examples of world building and character building and doing justice to his characters. Do you think it's something that we're just innately built with? Was he just built like that? He had to do it because he was born to do it.
What I think is this. So I'll let people in on a little bit of what drove me. So we went to the movie theaters and we saw, yes, I know it's crazy to say, the first Michael Bay's Transformer movie. And I was already a big film fan as it was, but after that movie, something happened. It was kind of like the Jurassic Park effect where it was awe-inspiring. And what Stan Lee did, and it goes into the hearing, is he saw something or he believed in something that was awe-inspiring and he was able to bring it to people and exploit it and make it great. He was able to take social issues and he was able to integrate it with the fantastic within the mundane, which is something that artists and writers and producers just don't understand. The magic in the mundane is the beauty of what Disney and what Marvel have done, where it seems like everyday life can be extraordinary even when you're just going to the grocery store. And Stan Lee made that something. And I think he's the perfect example of, like, being inspired. He was inspired by something, and he inspired many, which have inspired many since. It's like, without Stan Lee, this network does not exist.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of people you can point to that, but, like, he's one of those people where, like, if he doesn't talk to Jack Kirby, and if Steve Ditko doesn't do this, and so on and so forth, then these shows don't exist. So, I mean, I think inherently humans are very creative, and they want to be entertained, and they want to believe in the awe-inspiring. And I think, Stan Lee is the perfect example of doing it, being the first to do it, and having passion for it.
Yeah. He's just, in general, has been an inspiration just with all of the stuff that he does. But there's something that's, to set up this idea of really what it is this supernatural. I mean, it's science fiction, right? Like what you're bringing into all these things, because people who are larger than, or Greek mythology, which is, you know, a speculative fiction, like with Thor. And there's so many things that he brought in and put them in our world. Basically sat these supernatural beings or these science fiction like beings in our world and said, let me see what you can do here. And that to me is just one of the most fantastic things in general. You know, I think that he brought such a positive spin on so many things. And it, you know, there's a reason people get so excited to go see Avengers movies, because you know that the hero wins, because you know that good trumps evil, because you know that all of that, the way that we were raised, that we thought things were supposed to be, he makes it right in his films, and he creates characters who make it right, who fight for the little guy. And that to me was always so wonderful about him and what he did and the world that he built around these characters. Because we are in this world. It is, you know, placed in our world. There are still things that need to happen around that to allow this to happen, to allow the characters to do what they did. So the awe-inspiring kind of magnitude of these people, and they get treated like everyone else in most of their lives.
Yeah.
Because they're not anybody different.
I mean, the X-Men are literally the segregation and race movement and everything like that. Like they were ahead of the game, and yeah, I mean the legacy is set in stone. Like it's just one of those things too, where it's like it's not a tragedy. You know, it's more a reflection of like, man, one person could really have that much impact on this planet, and it just goes to show that it's not a cliche. It's like, yeah, a person can have that much impact on so many lives. So that is my big thing. And also, before we move on, obviously we're talking about Stan Lee and everything that happens in Hollywood, but I didn't get a chance to do this on Sports from the Couch, but you know, sending out all the love to all the people in California. For the forest fires, right?
I think it started out as a fire, now a forest fire, and now it's kind of just taking. It's a wildfire. Yeah, so absolutely, to everybody out there, there's a lot of people that are trying to do good.
We can. I mean, there's nothing I can say that's gonna help or because I was, but like, you know, I don't believe in praying for y'all, but like at the very least, like
thinking of you,
yeah. Like there's. You know,
and for all of our listeners here, there's a lot of places. I know that one of my favorite podcasts, Wine and Crime, they always promote buying like the wine and stuff that is actually from there, because it's putting back into the market, and that's what they need there. So like if you know of places that you like to purchase from, if you know of stores and communities and things like that in California, that's one of the best ways that you can give back. If you're not able to necessarily donate $1,000, is by going back into their economy does help them, because they are going to be having to go through another rebuild. And I feel like they just went through this last year. A year ago. Yeah. So they just went through this. So anything that you can do in that sense can help them as well. So it's something just to keep in mind, especially with Christmas coming up. We need to buy Christmas gifts. So
there you go. Yeah, no, it's so true.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode. Thank you, Producer Mike, for being my guest again.
I hope I answered any video game random questions. This is a random episode. It's kind of cool.
I kind of wanted to do it. Courtney is the one who wrote that article, and Courtney and Susan both have. Susan was on Able Gamer. She was actually one of the spotlighted people that you interviewed.
Mark Borley, the founder.
Yes, the founder. So Susan was actually one of the spotlighted people last month. Yeah. And so they talked about that and what happens in video games, and that because she's deaf and she's had other things happen in her life, those RPG games allow her to live out life as everybody else would. And so that was really cool and really something that we don't think about because we're fortunate enough to not have to. Yeah. But between that and just kind of thinking about that creative link, I thought it would be kind of an interesting thing to talk about, because I'm not as much of a video gamer, but you definitely are. And so being able to see those things kind of weave together and tie together and create such awesome things, I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The people at Able Gamers are awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome people.
So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into this episode of Typing When Tipsy. As always, I love to hear from you. So if you like, comment, and share, we'll try to pick topics that you guys want to hear too. So just let us know. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a great night.
If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. If you would like to support Mercado Airwaves, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Find us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the show on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all of Nicole's work at typingwhentipsy.wordpress.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. Follow Mike on Twitter at mmercado2333 and on Instagram, MikeMercado2333.
What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
It's another day at the office. I get to go out there and test my skill.
to award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones,
Orlando, how you doing,
How
buddy?
you, sir? I'm good, brother. How you doing?
and all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for anyone who would like to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support.